commenting on the Prime Minister's presentation this morning, because today are Friday, and Friday is not that kind of day. But you know how our audience is, them tune in and them go vex if you don't say nothing. So even though that's not a Friday kind of thing, it's necessary. So in the short time I have left, here I go. The presentation was comprehensive. The presentation was Prime Minister-esque. Remember, there have been, this is a third iteration or the third version of Andrew Holness that we are seeing in leadership. We saw an Andrew Holness in the time leading up to his ascension to the prime ministership in 2011. We saw Andrew Holness, another Andrew Holness, different Andrew Holness as opposition leader. And since 2016, we've been seeing a different Andrew Holness since that time. And even from 2016 till now, the Andrew Holness we're seeing today is different from the 2016 Andrew Holness and slightly different from the Andrew Holness that was leading us through COVID. This Andrew Holness is politically and from a governance perspective better than all the Andrew Holnesses we've seen before. That's not to say the previous Andrew Holnesses were bad, but they were lacking things that this Andrew Holness has in spades. So, this Andrew Holness on Thursday delivered a speech that, to me, was never boring. And I can't well tell when it was the last time Andrew Holness delivered a boring speech. There were times in the past, the previous Andrew Holnesses, who had speeches that meandered and were a yarn. But that was then. This Andrew Holness, and despite the length of the presentation, it was never boring. Maybe I'm not the right person to determine and judge the boringness of something, because unlike other people who can't read a book without pictures, I'm very much at home doing that. And I enjoy getting into something. So I enjoyed being brought into something as he made the presentation yesterday. And I think that the things that he touched, the things that he addressed in detail, were some of the things, or most of the things, that we would want to hear from a prime minister. Now, there are things that you'd expect to hear from an opposition spokesman on finance, clearly things that you'd expect to hear from the Minister of Finance and from the opposition leader. And then there are other things that you believe a prime minister should deal with and deal with substantively. The substance was delivered in copious amounts by the prime minister on Thursday. Where the politics is concerned, you can't get away from a budget presentation without putting politics in it. And so I disagreed with those who criticized the opposition leader for the politics element that was in his presentation, because that's something he's duty bound to do. And I had no problem with that. And it livened his presentation, which was also high on energy and very well delivered. The prime minister yesterday was measured. He's become a master of the craft of the set piece presentation. Well, he's mastered most, if not all, of the presentation formats. But when it comes to the set piece presentation, meaning people are going to draw a long bench, sit to listen to you recite, the prime minister has mastered that art. He knows when to do this, when to do that. And the moments that he chose to introduce the gags in response to the jibe and the jabs from the opposition leader were perfect. And I looked, and yesterday, as I heard people reacting in the office and saw them reacting in the chat, I was watching two different feeds. Well, I had two different feeds on my computer, and I had the PBCJ feed on the television in the office. So I was three different sources. You could hear people reacting as he drew the different points. And the point about the water was so very skillfully hidden. And at the point when he said, "Madam Speaker, I'm sure you'd allow me to sip some water." But the setup was before that point. The setup wasn't at the point when he said, "Madam Speaker, I'm sure you'd excuse me for having a sip of water." People say, that was the setup was a few sentences before that, but it was cleverly hidden so as not to give away that that's where he was going. We often criticize our leaders for talking down to us, for talking in a manner that only those who are intellectually elevated can understand. The presentation yesterday, in my view, was for the understanding of everyone. A reasonable person could understand. The bright man could understand it. The man who got to say, boy, I made no so quick, he could understand it and he could take something from it. And there wasn't a lot of time, thankfully, spent rehashing what the PNP did wrong and how the JLP fixed the country. That is old hat. What has gone before is old hat. But there was still relevance in, for context, putting in the speech things that had been done by the political rival, i.e. the PNP, and how the JLP had addressed those ills to put us where we are. That was necessary. It was not overdone. And there was not this almost wormhole kind of lamentation about how bad the country was. I mean, the whole country know how bad the country was in times gone by, and the Prime Minister focused on the now. And then the articulation around the NARA and what the NARA should do. And then the FAST, another acronym that the JLP created, yeah? And the relocation plans and the rebuilding plans for plans of Black River, for Trelawney, for Eastern Jamaica. So he went right around the compass where Jamaica is concerned to say, okay, we're going to do that there. We're going to do that there. Roads are coming there. 3 years' time, these should be complete. 4 years' time, these should be complete. That is not the semblance, not the structure. That wasn't a plan adumbrated, which means to give a sketchy outline of. There were plans that if you were listening keenly, you could see with your eyes what he was talking about and how the government was setting out its stall. You could see that in front of you as he spoke. Now, these are plans. Things can happen and things will happen. This is Jamaica. We're an island susceptible to natural disasters like Category 5 hurricanes. So plans may come a cropper, but you can't say that they weren't there. And as I watched the opposition members on the bench, you didn't think that anybody was saying, Lord God, manenia, laba, 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 laba. They were listening, and of course they were reacting to the points they objected to, that they felt deserved objection, and they were engaged. And of course the government members kept the Prime Minister's energy up. There was a lot of deep dive into what was said and reaction from sector leaders on our show, Nationwide at 5, hosted by Tyrone Reed, yesterday. So I don't have the time to forensically examine what the Prime Minister said, but of course that will come in subsequent shows. Just to say, it was the presentation you expected from someone who has been Prime Minister for so long, who's made so many speeches on so many fora, someone who don't let anybody browbeat you into not saying it. We have a Prime Minister in Jamaica who's a masterful communicator. It's a fact. It's a fact. I mean, what? You don't want to say it because people are going to say, yeah, Labour, right? Well, I'm no Labour, right? But I'm saying it. We have a Prime Minister who is a masterful communicator. And he has learned over time where time and place is concerned and his communication. And yesterday, holding the nation captive, he capitalized on the opportunity to speak at length about how his administration intends to go about rebuilding the country. In the same way the opposition leader had us captive on Thursday, and he spoke for longer than he usually speaks because he knows that this was his time to speak to the country, and he made good use of his time. The Prime Minister made brilliant use of his time as well. And I think we have a clear idea of where the government is going and how it intends to get there. The devil is always in the details. Someone sent me the origin of the quote. I didn't get to read it, but I want to read it, and I want to share it with you when I get the chance. So the Prime Minister was prime ministerial. Nothing more to say on that. He delivered what was expected of him.